Welcome back, everyone, to Queer Link. It is so good to be with you all today and just doing what I love. My name is Ree. I use they, them pronouns. My guest this week is Landyn Pan. Thank you so much for being here today. Tell us a little about yourself.
Thanks for having me, Ree. I'm Landon. I use they, them pronouns. I am transmasculine and non-binary. I live in Brooklyn, and I'm a personal trainer and a photographer.
So I thought it was really important, just as queer individuals, to talk about different family dynamics. And as a Chinese American, as being the only queer person in your family, how did you kind of go about just the pressures or stereotypes, and how was that reality for you?
Well, I feel like I'm still kind of going through that right now, right? Because I'm not out to like any of my extended family. I'm only out to my parents, and I feel like they accept me. And like at this point, it's been years. Like I feel like they don't really have a problem with it personally anymore.
Mm,
Um, but um in the West, it's like very individual. So it's like whatever you do, it doesn't really matter. Like if there's a black sheep in the family, like, oh, that's your thing. But in China, like it's all about like the family unit, and like a lot of times that extends to, like the entire extended family, like all the aunts and uncles and the cousins and stuff like that. So it's like your reputation is like tied to your families. And so I feel like both of my parents are very embarrassed to like talk about like queerness or transness like with my extended family. In fact, like my mom has been very adamant about like me not telling them,
mm.
even though like I've seen some of my extended family members, and it's like, I sound like this and I look like this now. And she just doesn't want me to address being queer or trans. And I feel like that has made me feel really disconnected from my family and from my culture, because all my extended family lives in China too. It's only like me and my mom and my brother who like live in the United States. So yeah, it's hard. And then coming out as trans, that was sort of like, well, I just got used to you being a
Mm.
lesbian, and now you're telling me all this. Like this is it. It was like a way bigger deal, because then it was like I was gonna change my body, and like to her, she was like, why would you like ruin the body that like I gave you, and like all this stuff. So it was a lot.
Yeah,
Yeah.
of course. And I'm curious, just during this time, did you kind of have an outside community?
I feel like I was very lucky, because at my school, like my
Mm.
peers were very supportive. Like I remember coming out to my middle school friend, and it was like not a big deal. First of all, like my middle school friend, she is so straight. And like I will see her on Instagram sometimes now, and she's like a big model now, and like just so heterosexual, like very boy crazy. I had a boyfriend in eighth grade because she had a boyfriend, and she was like, I want us both to have boyfriends, like, so we could all hang out, sort of thing. Like she was really the one who like orchestrated and set all that up for me, and like told me what to say and what to do, and like all that stuff. She's so funny, like such a character. But I just remember, yeah, like we were in PE, like maybe we were playing like volleyball or something like that. And I was telling her like I had a crush on this other girl, and I said I was bi, and like it just wasn't a big deal at all. And I'm so grateful that like that was my experience, like coming out to the first person ever. Like I'm so
Mm.
grateful to her for like just being so chill, and for not making such a big deal out of it. Like at all. Like it was just like I was telling her that I had a crush on a boy. She just like heard it, took it, giggled with me, talked about the girl with me, stuff like that. It was very affirming. And at my school, I think like when I was younger, people would kind of make fun of me for like the way that I dressed or the way that I behaved, because I was always like a tomboy. Like, and um once I was kind of aware that like, oh, like people now have crushes, and girls are supposed to be like this and boys are supposed to be like that, like I was very awkward. I didn't know
Mhm.
what to do with myself. And so yeah, I received some bullying then, but for the most part, it was like once I kind of came to terms with myself, I was about 14, and then I cut
Mm.
my hair and started dressing differently, and like a year later changed my name before I even knew I was trans. Like for the most part, a lot of people were like, oh, like this makes a lot of sense. Like you look so good, or like this just makes sense. And
Mm.
I am very grateful to have had that at my school.
And it's so awesome to hear that you just had, I think, as anyone and just coming out, just to have one person to turn to, just one person who just has your back, you know? Like,
Yeah.
what a game changer that is.
Yeah, like man, she was so cool, really. Like
How
yeah.
was changing just your name and how that experience was?
So it was funny because like my old name was very feminine and I hated it.
Okay.
I felt like earlier in elementary school, I was very androgynous, like in like third, fourth grade. And I remember my first day at my new school in fourth grade, like everybody, like half the class like thought I was a boy. And there was like activity, like this get to know you activity that the teacher had us do,
Mm-hmm.
where like you go around and you like ask someone like your favorite color, ask someone their like favorite animal, whatever, like like stuff like that. And it's like count all the boys in the class and count all the girls in class. Like half the
Mm-hmm.
class got it wrong because they didn't know like what I was. But then it was like my name would give that away, and I hated that. So I did theater back then, and I was like, oh, like I'm gonna be famous one day, and I should like have like a stage name.
Yeah.
So I chose the name Landon. I misspelled it because I wanted it to be like and more androgynous, like less of just a boy's name. And so before going into high school, you were allowed to change your preferred. Like you could like you register, you write in your preferred name and stuff like that. So I just changed my preferred name on there, and that was that. So I entered high school with a new name.
That's so cool that your high school even had the preferred name.
Oh, it's really cool because you know what also happened was
Mm.
that summer before high school, I was in China with my dad the whole time, and like like my mom was all about like airplane deals. So she bought like plane tickets for me to return after the first day of school started.
Hmm.
She didn't like she was like, "Oh, it's way cheaper this way." So you could just like miss a few days of school, it'll be fine.
Where?
But like to get my class schedule, like she needed to go to my school to pick it up.
Mm-hmm.
And she like freaked out because she was like, "You're not like on the list." She was like, "I went to the school and your name wasn't there," because she saw Landon and didn't know that I had changed it. And
Oh,
then she was like, "We'll change your name back." And I think she tried to call the school to change my name back, but the school actually said that like the preferred name was actually up to the students, which is really cool.
wow. That's so cool.
This was in 2010.
That's pretty awesome for 2010, I feel like.
It really was. Yeah, I felt like I was very lucky. I grew up in sort of like this liberal. I mean, I grew up in the Seattle areas. It was pretty liberal.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was really really nice.
That like your first experience kind of with your mom and just like this is kind of who I am now.
Well, man, I don't really remember how I even explained to her like the name change. I think I kind of just said like I just don't like my old name. Like I just don't like it. I kind
Mhm.
of said that a bunch of times. By then I was already out as queer. I think I maybe did say it's just too feminine or something like that, but I wasn't out as trans yet. I think I was identifying as genderqueer. Nobody uses that word anymore. I don't really hear
Really?
it. I
Yeah.
don't hear it as much anymore. Yeah, but like that was a term back then, and it definitely was like being non-binary, being genderqueer was not mainstream. Um, but yeah, I had that I guess as an identity label back then. In between freshman and sophomore year, that was when I was like I did like a queer youth like filmmaking camp. I feel like that really helped me to kind
Mm.
of like start to meet like okay, these are like queer youth from other schools in the area, and then I would go hang out with some of them and meet their friends, and like that's kind of how it all started. And then soon it was like I kind of know like a couple people who go to this school, a couple people who go to that school and stuff like that.
Awesome that also you had like
Yeah.
a camp experience with all these queers though, and just like seeing how other people identify and
Yeah. Oh, and it was messy too because like people would like it would be like, oh, like we had this really great friend group sophomore year, but then everybody started dating each other and it just like dissolved by the end of sophomore year, like that L word stuff definitely happened to us like when we were really young.
I kind of love that though.
Yeah.
Did you kind of always know that you were trans and or trans masculine and how that identity came?
So I think so. I think I always knew those things because like I've always liked girls. Like even I remember like first grade, I told this girl that I liked her, and she was like I can't because like you're a girl or like whatever.
Mm.
That happened or like I remember also in first grade, I told I told some friends I wanted to be a boy, and then this one girl was like, she was like weirdly religious. And now that I think about it, I'm like, who's that religious at like 6, 7 years old? But like, she was like, do you believe in God? And I'm like, yeah. And she was like, well, God doesn't make mistakes and like all this stuff. And now I'm like, okay. And but yeah, I feel like I've always kind of known, and it was more just like I kept it, you learn to keep it under wraps because you learn that it's not really
Yeah.
an acceptable thing. And then kind of like once I learned that like, oh, people do live out and they have fine lives and all that stuff, then that was kind of like why I came out, because it was like, oh, like this is a thing that people do.
This time last year, we're kind of figuring yourself out and figuring like what to do. And now you're a fitness trainer, a queer fitness trainer, giving queer people that space. How is it seeing like those results and I guess just that journey for you?
I mean, I would say that personal training has been like a really rewarding journey.
Mm,
Definitely. I feel like, when I first wanted to be a trainer, it really was just like, oh, like I just love to teach people to work out and all that stuff. And really, like the workouts are like kind of like not even like the biggest part of it.
yeah.
Obviously, it is part of it, but I think it's like the emotional stuff, right? Like, I've had people tell me that they have different views about food now, or like that, like I
Mm,
make them feel really strong and very capable. Like, even if like, other past trainers or like maybe past fitness classes like haven't given them that. Somebody actually posted today, one of my trans clients posted today that they, don't usually take shirtless pics, but they're really, happy with their progress, in the gym, and that they're really feeling themselves. And like, I just love to hear that. So mission as a trainer is I want my clients to find joy through fitness or like other types of movement. I want them to know that like, you're doing this to take care of your body. You're doing this because you want to feel good. And there are many different ways to do it. Like there's no like you have to do certain things. Yeah, there's a lot of different ways to do things. And well, I guess if you want a really specific goal, you have to do specific things, but it's like you could always adapt kind of like how you're feeling in a given day or a week. Like you
mhm.
don't always have to, do what's according to plan.
Do you know like other people who do the same thing you do?
Yeah, well, because now I'm really into fitness, like I'm trying to find other people as well. So it's like, yeah, there are I think a ton of transpersonal trainers, but I wouldn't really recommend like everybody because um I think a lot of people, even if they are trans, still adhere to like a lot of things within mainstream fitness. And one of that is like believing in like, oh, like calories in, calories out. Like if you're
Mm,
fat, that just means you eat too much. Like, like a lot of I do see a lot of trans trainers still believing in that, and that's very toxic. And so it's like, yeah, just because they're trans, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're body inclusive, or that like, they view fitness as like a holistic thing, which I do. So
mm.
yeah, it really depends. I think that the amount of queer and trans trainers that are the types of trainers that I want to become, or like, who I really admire, that's definitely a smaller pool.
And for someone who is queer and is looking for a personal trainer, do you kind of have like any advice to kind of give them or maybe what they should look out for?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say, working with a trainer should be a collaborative process. So you shouldn't be afraid to speak up or to talk about your likes and dislikes with this person.
Mm,
I don't think that, you want to look for somebody that you feel comfortable with. You don't want to feel guilty telling them certain things. You also want to ask them like a lot of questions about their philosophies and all that stuff. Like like they're working for you at the end of the day, so it's like
mm,
you want to have something that you like and trust. And just know that like, a trainer isn't always somebody who like they don't have to be like the main like authority, like they don't have to be like, okay, this is what you're going to do, and then like you have to do that exactly. Like you should be able to be like, actually, I really hate doing this one thing, can we have a different type of thing, like,
I'm curious, is your clientele like getting broader? Is it really just in New York?
I have a lot of people in California as well.
Mm,
So it's California, New York, and then I have like Washington, Ohio. I did talk to someone in Texas. I talked to someone in Canada.
oh,
I,
cool.
one of my clients is in London. I think I have another client that's in like one of the Carolinas or something who's starting with me soon. So yeah, I mean, I love the fact that like online can kind of
Mm,
bring me to anyone, like especially because like my client who is in Ohio has told me that like there's just not a lot of fitness stuff like in their city, like even pre-pandemic. So, let alone like inclusive spaces. So
mm.
yeah, so it's like I don't really care where you are. Like as long as we could find something that fits in our schedule, like in our different time zones, like I'm cool with that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think this whole Zoom and I don't know, I think it's really like brought us closer. I mean, I don't know if I would have gotten one if I was just going to the gym. I don't know. It's so different and it's very also very personal, you know.
Yeah, yeah. In fact, I think I want even more clients that are kind of like in the middle or like in like the middle of the country or like in smaller places just because like I feel like there's probably like there's like less options out there because like in New York like pre-pandemic there was like a queer gym like in Bushwick or maybe it wasn't like like specifically queer but it was very inclusive and a lot of queer people went there, there's stuff like that or there's like trans boxing in New York, but
Mhm.
uh, in Ohio, I don't know.
So I was wondering how your perception of masculinity has changed.
It's really weird because I used to really try to pin down like a gender identity. I feel like because labels were so useful to me, like when I was first coming out and trying to find community, whether I was like online or like, in person or whatever. But these days, I feel like labels aren't really super necessary to me anymore, just because it's like nothing can be defined. I feel like in me, and it's changing all the time. Like to be honest, like
Mhm.
lately I've been kind of feeling like a man, which is like, okay, like I just kind of like take it and observe it. Whereas like, a couple months ago, I was really like adamant about like, I really feel like I can't, be boxed in or anything like that. And
Mm,
I think my definitions of like, like what it means to be a man has changed as well. But, and in the past, like, it's kind of gone back and forth, or like there's even been times where like I've kind of felt like a butch woman in a way.
mm.
Uh, yeah, it's gone back and forth a lot. And at this point, it's just like I just have to accept that like it's always just gonna be kind of like changing here and there. And like there's not really a point in trying to pin it down. But I would say that non-binary definitely encompasses sort of my whole experience of being queer for like the past 10, being out for the past 10 years. And
Mm.
that's sort of been the one that has encompassed it all the most. And I think it was a couple months ago I made a post where I was like, I really just want people to call me they them, and I felt like that was really freeing because like I did feel like I was being boxed into something that was like maybe too masculine or like too in like the man category, even by like other trans people sometimes
Mm.
because like, the way that I looked or maybe my interests and the way that like I just am and stuff like that. And being like no, like telling people like straight up like in a more formal way that I am non-binary, like hey, just a reminder I use
Mhm.
they like it was very freeing because I feel like now like I can enjoy maybe some of these masculine things that I enjoy like without feeling like oh I have to do it like like these are the only options that I have. Like now I just feel more free to like enjoy things like as is and it feels more natural.
How has your journey been on testosterone for the past 5 years, just emotionally and physically?
It's been good. It's been wonderful, I think.
Mm.
Like I don't think that I really knew how important tea was to me. I did consider going off of it recently, but then I was like, I don't know, like it just feels off, like to not have this be like the main thing that's in my body. But yeah, it's been nice. And I would say that I've come to a place where like I feel very comfortable. I feel like I've always been pretty comfortable. But now even more so in that like viewing masculinity as like just like a really nice thing. Like I really enjoy being masculine and I feel like I have before, but there was a time in the middle of me taking testosterone where like I was very resistant to a lot of things that were masculine because I felt like one, I felt like I had to perform being non-binary because I feel like now, people have this idea that it's like, oh, like non-binary or like gender fluid is like when people like wear a dress one day and then they wear it like guys clothes the other day, like, like stuff like that. And it's just like, um, you don't really have to be like that. But yeah, so I felt like I had to perform that in a way and push myself to kind of like gender bend. And I didn't really do that much because it didn't make me that comfortable.
Yeah.
Um, and two, like I feel like this is quite common with trans masculine people where it's like you don't want to be associated with certain types of masculinity because you think that
Mm.
like it's like you're afraid to be like the bad men that you hate, or like you're
Hmm.
afraid to be like that bro, or like like like, you just don't want to embody like toxic masculinity. But these things are so separate. And yeah, I've just really learned more of how to enjoy myself as a masculine person and not be like
Mm.
a of that. Find balance because
Hmm.
like you do have to check yourself, and I do that often, but also like you have to just give yourself grace as well, and just like remember too that like sometimes that could box yourself into too many scripts, and then it's like you maybe feel horrible about yourself, or like you're afraid to do things that give you pleasure because you're afraid of like other people's perceptions. And it's just like
Yeah.
yeah, it's a balance. It's so frustrating because it really is like these big brands now wanting to be like queer,
Mhm.
inclusive. They're always like, okay, like, gender neutral brand. And it'll be
Mhm.
like, yeah, it's always like some white person with like a buzz cut. And they're always AFAB. And it's just like, I'm really, really tired of that image. And it's really misleading. And it's really feeding like everyone the wrong information.
Mhm. No, I
Yeah.
totally agree. So, do you have any plans to go spend time with your family?
So that's such a complicated question, I feel like, because it's like family history is something that I've thought about always for like such a long time. And I want to be connected and I want to know, like, I think I more so want to know my family history because this is funny because it's like even if I did speak Chinese and they were accepting of me being queer, my extended family, at least on my mom's side, is really whack. It's full of drama. Like she like will tell me so many stories about like who did what, and it's like they don't sound that pleasant anyway.
Mhm.
But it's like I still want to go and hear more family stories because that's a part of myself, right? It's like I still want to know, even if I want to keep a distance for the most part. But it's just tough because I especially want to visit my dad. I want to go live in China actually for like 3 months. My
Mhm.
dad is an artist and he teaches right now. He was retired. He teaches college now. And I would just love to like take one of his classes for a semester. I feel like that would be really fun,
Mm.
especially in drawing and painting. But I just know like if I and I've been thinking about the logistics of this because it's like if I go over there, you know, um, he's told his students that he has a daughter and
Mm.
all this stuff. Who am I gonna be like when I go there and I meet
Mm.
his other students? And if I'm there, my extended family is in that same city. Are we gonna not tell them so I could avoid them, or are we gonna tell them and then we're gonna have like a big like giant banquet hall dinner, which is like usually what happens. They rent out like a big like room in a restaurant, and everybody's there. Um, that's gonna be awkward, right? Because it's like, yeah, I look like this, and also I think about the future too. It's like the more on T I am, like the less boyish and the less androgynous I look.
Mhm.
Especially now that I'm like I keep on bulking up, like my body just does not look like a cis girl,
Mhm.
this woman's body. So like how I just feel like the questions are just gonna get more and more unavoidable in the future. And I just don't like I feel like it's inevitable that I have to say something. But like the way that my mom reacts to me saying that I want to tell my family, like she
Mm.
just like reacts so badly. I don't really want to go there. It makes me not want to go there. But yeah, I do wonder. And it also does suck too because my dad is someone who's so connected to his extended family. Like he's in touch with his like second and third cousins and stuff like that. Like at that point, like you're not even really that related. But
Exactly.
like he'll be like, oh, like like you have a cousin who lives in Shanghai and like she has her own house and all that stuff. And it's like, well, I would love to stay with her if I ever went to Shanghai, you know, but it's like, how are we really gonna explain this?
Would this be like this plan? Would this be the first time you like spend this much time with your dad?
Yeah, it would be because, you know, I haven't lived with him since I was 6. He's always lived in China. And he yeah, he's always lived in China. And I haven't really spent like more than like maybe like half a summer with him since then.
Hmm.
So yeah, it's complicated with him too because with my mom, because I lived with her, we had a lot of conversations about queerness,
Hmm.
mostly her asking me inappropriate questions,
Mm.
or like, you know, wanting to, like, sometimes she'd be like, I just want to understand like what queer people do and like all this stuff and like,
Mm.
you know, asking questions about like what are bisexuals, you know, stuff like that. Like we've had a lot of conversations about it. My dad definitely is someone who avoids having hard conversations. So my
Mhm.
mom has said disgusting things to me. My dad has not said anything rude to me. Um, it's like we just haven't really talked about it too much.
Mm.
So I don't know. Like I want to talk to him about queerness and transness. I
Yeah.
don't know how he's felt about any of this. Like, you know, like I have seen my mom's like emotional journeys and her waves like throughout the years. I do not know my dad's.
Mm. Do you find that you're looking forward to it, but also, kind
It's
of
just gonna be emotionally hard
Mhm.
because my dad and I have a big language barrier,
Okay.
and like he never left China, right? So he only knows Chinese. My Chinese is pretty limited, and yeah, I just it's awkward. He's not gonna ask any questions. I have to bring it up, and I feel like the times that I've brought it up, he's been a little uncomfortable, but he
Mm.
won't stop the conversation.
That's a really big move. I want to say like I'm proud of you just for even like wanting to do that and also just like connecting with your parents, you know.
Also, I mean, I want my family to know that I'm queer. And it's interesting because it's just like we can be so out, like you know, like I'm so out, like in my life in general and everybody that I know like here in the States. But yeah, like it's like in China, it's just a whole different story. And that's even just jarring to wrap my head around because it's like I've been out of the closet for so long. I don't know. I feel like a lot of people think that like masculinity is like in opposition to like something when it's like not.
What do you
Like I don't
mean?
know, like if you feel that, like I feel like that sometimes like it's been interesting because like I will meet trans mask people. This was more like a couple of years ago. I feel like when like I think trans masculinity was a lot more rigid. Because now I feel like I see a lot of like femme like trans masculine people
Mhm.
who are like yeah, very visible. But I feel like a couple of years ago that wasn't really so. It was a lot more of a rigid picture of like what trans masculinity looked like. And you know, I was really into like meeting internet friends back then. This was maybe like 6, 7, 5 years ago.
Okay.
Um, and I remember meeting like this one femme trans mask Asian person, and they said that like you know I was one of the first, or like that I'm like the first person that they've met who's Asian and trans mask, and you know was really surprised that like because I'm one of the only trans people that like trans mask people who didn't like shame them for being feminine, because I think we went thrifting together and they tried on like different like kind of more feminine things like outfits and accessories and stuff like that, and I was
Mhm.
very encouraging, and like it's sad to for me to hear that. I don't really hear that anymore, but it's just
Mm.
like I don't know, like why would you think that I would care really like about like your presentation when like we're all supposed to be queer and we're all supposed to just do whatever the fuck with ourselves anyway, right? And I definitely still feel that like other more feminine trans mass people will project maybe like some of their past experiences like onto me and
Hmm.
like assume that like I you know don't see them or assume that like I think that they should act a certain way when like I don't, and that's like frustrating because it's like I don't think that like being masculine is in opposition to like being feminine. Like you could have both or you could have none of that, or you know like within yourself, and it's just like that stuff just doesn't matter to me.
Had a recent experience like that or
I would say it was maybe like a year ago or so, but it's still in my mind because like
Mm.
one, like I think about like you know for someone to project that they had to have had bad past experiences maybe with other trans mass people, it just makes me sad, I guess, like um to think that trans people would police other trans people. And yeah, and it's just like I don't know. I've never really cared about that stuff.
Do you see a lot of policing just on social media?
Like I don't think it's very blatant, I guess, on my end,
Hmm.
but I think that like certain people get celebrated more than others, and then it's like, we all witness that, and that sends a message.
It does.
In terms of blatant like stuff, I mean, I know it goes on. I guess in my personal experience, I haven't seen too much of it, but um, there, I definitely think that queer people still internalize gender roles like big time.
Hmm.
Even trans people, like it's like I had this conversation with a cis gay friend of mine. He said that like, oh, like tops grunt low, bottoms like moan high, and like stuff like that. And it's just like, and then like that's what he's used to. And he said that he was like almost a little surprised one time when like someone was topping him and the top was kind of like moaning kind of high. And it's just like you guys are just internalizing like gender roles like in a weird way when like you all have the same voice, like everyone's voice dropped. Like, like it's just like you're performing what you
Hmm.
think bottoms and tops should be like based on these internalized gender roles. So I definitely feel that. And like that's a little frustrating to me because yeah, I feel like when I date femmes, like it's I definitely feel that sometimes. Like it's like gendered expectations. And like I don't want to have that.
As queer people, we even put those, and we have to, I even had to like break through that for sure. Like,
Yeah, absolutely. You'll hear a lot of times though, yeah, like trans mass people being like, yeah, like when I date femmes, like I'm expected to top, even though like I'm a bottom and stuff like that. Like you hear that a lot, I think, or at least I do. So yeah, this like who chases who, like who tops who bullshit, like
yeah.
I'm over that.
You could even swing it the other way around too. I mean, there's also like femmes out there who expect, trans masked people to be a certain way and vice versa. I don't know. I
Absolutely.
found it both ways.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely feel that a lot. And sometimes it's very light and it doesn't bother me too much. Like,
Yeah.
because it's like sometimes you naturally fall into those
Yeah.
roles based on your interests, and that'll be okay.
Hmm.
But other times, I'll try to challenge it just a little bit.
I think it took me a long time to break out of that. And I think I'm actually right now just in the first like partnership that's like feels very equal for me versus
That's
like
awesome.
before where I was just like very like, oh, I'm masculine, you're feminine, like that's just how it is. And I
Yeah.
feel like, and also it could be the people who I was around too, who are like very like that too. So if, people are like me, then I'm like, oh, well, you got to be this macho person. But it's just like, aren't we trying to break out of that? And aren't
Yeah,
we?
yeah, it's hard to break out of that though because it's like everything else in like mainstream society supports you to act a certain way
Mhm.
because you're masculine or whatever. So yeah, it takes a lot of work, but you'll feel freer when you do.
So thank you, Landon, so much for being here today. If you enjoyed this video, please give us a like or subscribed and you'll get notified for our release of weekly videos. Thank you.